Consider this an urgent intelligence briefing. What we're witnessing right now in the Middle East, it's not just some temporary diplomatic shift or a minor tweak in foreign policy. We are literally watching the complete structural collapse of the regional order that's been in place since 1945. For the policymakers tuning into this briefing, the magnitude of the communique released just 48 hours ago absolutely cannot be overstated. We're looking at a fundamental realignment that's going to reshuffle the entire global deck.
Okay, let's dive into this. As Ambassador Chaz Freeman, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense, bluntly puts it, we are witnessing the end of the Pax Americana in the Middle East. And this isn't just wild speculation. Former U.S. officials are confirming that the question isn't whether American primacy is going to survive, but rather just how incredibly fast the transition to an entirely new regional order is going to happen.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this upheaval, we've broken down this briefing into 6 parts. We'll start with the end of the American order, unpack that massive new Iranian-Saudi military pact, look at the immediate maritime security alert, and then dive into the incoming global energy shock. Finally, we'll examine the real catalyst behind all this, Chinese regional hegemony, and map out the future strategic scenarios you absolutely need to prep for. Let's get moving.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the end of the American order. Now, to understand what just broke, we really need to set the historical baseline of the American dominance that's disintegrating right before our eyes.
Ever since the end of World War II, right back to when President Harry Truman met King Abdulaziz on the USS Quincy, the whole Washington Consensus basically rested on 3 massive pillars. 1, unconditional support for Israel. 2, a rock-solid alliance with Saudi Arabia to control global oil prices. And 3, the strict containment and isolation of Iran. Now, this architecture has guided literally every single U.S. president, Republican or Democrat. But today, that exact same architecture has totally failed.
Let's just walk through the timeline for a second. For over 40 years, since 1979, the Saudi-Iranian rivalry has been the massive fault line in the region. We're talking about incredibly destructive proxy wars that cost upwards of $3 trillion in cumulative military spending across 14 major conflicts. $3 trillion. But then boom, in 2023, China steps in to broker a normalization. And that brings us to the present day, a sudden, concrete joint military framework that just abruptly replaces 4 decades of proxy warfare.
Which brings us directly to Section 2, the Iranian-Saudi military pact. Let's dive right into the specific details of the massive intelligence shock that just materialized 48 hours ago.
You see, this isn't just some symbolic peace agreement. Signed by the defense ministries of both Saudi Arabia and Iran, this sets up 4 very concrete mechanisms. We're talking a joint military committee, vital intelligence sharing protocols, and joint naval exercises slated for Q4. But it's that 4th point, a mutual defense consultation framework where both nations commit to talking before taking any military action, that has Pentagon strategists deeply, deeply concerned right now.
Moving right along to Section 3, the Maritime Security Alert. We need to put on our maritime security expert hats for a moment to really analyze the immediate logistical threat here.
21 million. That is the number of barrels of oil that squeeze through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. Just to put that into perspective, that's roughly 21% of the entire world's daily oil consumption. The U.S. Fifth Fleet has continuously patrolled those exact waters since 1949 to guarantee the global flow of energy. And today, that historical dominance is being directly challenged.
So the crucial point is really perfectly summarized here by General Kenneth McKenzie, the former commander of U.S. Central Command, during his Senate Armed Services Committee testimony. He stated, any cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Iran in maritime security would represent a significant challenge to American interests in the Gulf region. The severe risk of Iranian and Saudi naval forces running joint, coordinated patrols in this massive strategic choke point, it just completely upends the traditional U.S.-led security architecture.
Section 4, the global energy shock. This security upheaval is sending out massive economic shockwaves. Let's look at exactly why this geopolitical realignment is going to directly hit global gas prices and supercharge inflation.
Just look at the bilateral trade growth here. We're seeing a staggering 340% increase in trade between Saudi Arabia and Iran in just a couple of years. They're jumping from $1.2 billion in 2023 to a projected $4.2 billion by 2025. This hard data proves that this isn't just talk. This rapprochement is deeply structurally real.
But the real game changer is this massive infrastructure investment.
Saudi Arabia is committing $18 billion to joint projects, including a natural gas pipeline connecting straight to Iran's South Pars field starting in Q1 of 2027. We are talking about the world's second-largest oil reserve, Saudi Arabia, and the second-largest gas reserve, Iran, actively coordinating their energy infrastructure. This unprecedented alignment is a direct, massive threat to the entire petrodollar system.
The International Energy Agency has already fired a massive warning shot. In a classified assessment, they noted this coordination could fundamentally alter the supply-demand balance in ways that significantly increase producer leverage over consumer nations. By coordinating their energy output completely outside of formal OPEC mechanisms, these two giants are going to drastically increase their leverage. And make no mistake, that is going to directly hit your domestic cost of living.
All right, moving to Section 5, Chinese regional hegemony. So who is the real facilitator behind this massive realignment? Well, we are basically watching the real-time replacement of the United States by China as the region's absolute, indispensable power broker.
Let's just contrast the sheer failure of U.S. leverage against China's rise here. When U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio asked Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to delay this military pact in exchange for security guarantees, he was politely but firmly turned down. You see, the U.S. relies on conditional guarantees and super volatile 4-year election cycles. Contrast that with the Chinese approach, a massive $400 billion 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership with Iran. It guarantees oil purchases with absolutely zero conditions and, crucially, zero lectures on human rights.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the hard data totally proves China's deliberate strategic takeover. Just look at the diplomacy. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made 34 trips to the region. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, just 12. And financially, while the U.S. exhausted $3 trillion on regional proxy wars, China committed $280 billion strictly to Belt and Road infrastructure.
It's basically like a giant puzzle, but let's use a brilliant historical analogy to make it crystal clear: the Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta fought each other until both sides were completely exhausted, which allowed Macedon to just rise up and dominate without firing a single shot. The parallel here is literally perfect. The US and Iran have totally exhausted each other over 47 years of sanctions and proxy wars, and meanwhile, China's playing the role of Macedon, building the architecture for its regional hegemony entirely unimpeded.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, Future Strategic Scenarios. With this new reality firmly in place, how do policymakers actually move forward? Let's wrap up this briefing by forecasting the specific probabilities and outcomes that you need to be actively preparing for.
Let's move to and see how this builds into 3 distinct trajectories. Path 1 is limited cooperation at 15%, pretty much just symbolic shifts. Path 3 is aggressive U.S. pushback at 25%, risking severe regional war. But Path 2, sitting at a 60% probability, is our most likely trajectory. This is full realignment, constant energy coordination, a direct challenge to the petrodollar, and regular naval ops. This signals a permanent decline in American influence and guarantees highly volatile global energy markets going forward.
So that leaves us with one incredibly critical indicator to monitor right now. Will those joint naval exercises actually happen in Q4? If Saudi and Iranian vessels successfully patrol the Strait of Hormuz together later this year, the US-led order is irreversibly over. What does a China-centric Middle East mean for global stability and your daily cost of living? I'll leave you to chew on that profound question as you digest the monumental implications of this briefing.